Hello. So, it is Gary Stevenson week here on Barry's Economics. A lot of you will have heard of Gary Stevenson because he has a YouTube channel called Gary's Economics, which is obviously a rip-off of this channel.
Okay, welcome back to Gary's Economics. Today we are going to explain everything you need to know about bond markets.
He has a documentary coming out on Channel 4 on the 8th of July, Wednesday the 8th of July at 9 p.m. It is called How to Get Filthy Rich. I've seen it, it's brilliant. I just want as many people to see it as possible.
Are you worried about what might happen to inequality if rich people increasingly stop paying taxes?
You have an obsession with this solving inequality.
People are having to make a decision on whether they eat or whether they stay warm.
This is millions of hard-working people who can't afford basic housing.
I got about 3,000 acres of land. Everything you can see is mine. Reminds me of the Lion King.
The persistence of democracy requires a fairer society.
I just want to live in a country where people are thriving. I'm happy to pay more tax.
Why is it only rich people who are supposed to not look out for their own interests? Is everyone else looking out for them?
How to Get Filthy Rich with Gary Stevenson on Channel 4, Wednesday at 9.
We're going to be releasing 3 episodes over the next couple of weeks to support it because it has a message that I think everyone needs to hear. If you haven't heard of Gary Stevenson, basically he's a fascinating guy. So he's 39 years old. He was born in Ilford in Essex to a working class family. And he was very talented at maths, which meant that he got to the London School of Economics and by the age of 24 was in trading and became a multi-millionaire. But actually, it's around then that his real story begins because he quit trading and then has spent the rest of his time campaigning for a wealth tax.
I quit that job in 2014 to try and stop that inequality from growing.
Really, he's become Britain's leading campaigner for a wealth tax.
Do you think the average British and American worker at the 50th percentile, do you think their kids will be richer than they are? I know you're probably a wealthy man, you probably don't want to pay high taxes, you probably don't want your kids to pay high taxes, but we exist in an economy where wealth is being extracted out of the middle class, out of the working class, very, very rapidly. It's benefiting people like the 3 of us at this table. It will benefit our kids. You know, our kids will be rich, their kids will be poor. And I just think we should be honest with them. Capitalism's finished. We won. Well done, Stephen. Well done, Daniel. Well done, Gary. It's over now. Our kids will be rich, their kids will be poor. They'll pay the taxes. We won't pay the taxes. We'll avoid it. I'll make money betting on it year after year. Why are we lying to them?
His YouTube channel currently has 1.6 million subscribers as of today. It's always growing. He's written a best-selling book, literally the best-selling audiobook of 2025. And Gary's actually the inspiration behind this channel. And behind the scenes, Gary and his team have just been incredibly supportive of what we're doing here at Barry's Economics. So he came in a couple of weeks ago and we had a chat, when I say a chat, like a 2.5-hour chat. This is the first of 3 episodes talking to Gary Stevenson around the issues around inequality and the issues that his documentary raised. Here is my conversation with Gary Stevenson. I hope you enjoy it.
So when I did the documentary, I was going around and I interviewed like a lot of like billionaires and all this kind of stuff. And I interviewed this one billionaire and he's got a really like, luxury flat, one Hyde Park, which is like the most expensive.
One Hyde Park.
Yeah, the most expensive like apartment building in the country. Yeah. And to be fair, you know, I actually, he seemed like a nice guy to me. We got on well. He was, you know, gentleman and polite, and we had a good conversation. But he's got this amazing view of Hyde Park. You know what I mean? And I was standing there and I said to him, "Oh, it's a great view of Hyde Park. Like, you know, you go down often, like you go for runs in the park." And he said to me, "I've never been once. I've never been once. It's too dangerous. He said, we've got a golf simulator downstairs," is what he said. And I was like, but I mean, what this shows is, you know, these guys are alone, right? But we don't have to fight this alone. And I think that is the big sort of message that I want people to see. And this is why I want there to be a lot of different heads and faces in the space. But when I did that documentary, the big thing that I found was, even these people like the billionaires, okay, whatever, maybe I'm projecting, whatever. I interviewed a lot of rich people. They all seem to me, if I'm totally honest, pretty unhappy. Yeah. But then I also interviewed people like this guy, Andrew Myerson, who, NHS doctor, shivering in the cold, reading his... And, maybe this is me putting my emotional spin on it. But when I speak to these people, and I interviewed a lot of people, I interviewed Dylan Law, he's a new, I think he's 19, new vice mayor of Hackney. And these are people who are not rich, but what I see is, because they are stepping forward and taking action in some way, and they're all doing it in their own different way, which is, I am going to fight somehow. You don't do it by yourself. You put your drop of effort on the right side of the scales. I'm going to push somehow. These people had something, belief in the future. I tried to ask everybody, are you optimistic? And almost without exception, the only people who felt optimistic about the future were the people who were doing something and doing something small. And I think that connects us. You know what I mean? That all of us who are trying to do something, that connects us. Yeah. That connects us.
And that's the difference between the cynicism, because I think cynicism is a tax. It's like, I saw Bollocks of Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
That's the difference between that and hope. You have to do something. You have to go out.
I interviewed this one guy, Andrew Myerson is his name.
Myerson.
Yeah, he's not famous. He's although he does occasionally appear on media. He's a doctor, NHS doctor. Big, gentle giant. There was a protest, and we were filming at the protest, against austerity and cuts and all this kind of thing. And it was a freezing cold day, sleeting that day. It was that horrible day. And he had come to this protest underdressed, definitely for the weather. Yeah. So he had a kind of little a little woolen gilet type thing. Yeah. And he's shivering because it was too cold for what he was wearing, and he didn't have a coat. And he's talking austerity, blah blah blah, and this and that. And at one point, I'll probably get emotional telling this story. He pulls out this little slip of paper, like a crumpled little slip of paper, and he's it's all handwritten. And he starts reading off this piece of paper all of the different things that have been cut, so it's 275 football pitches and 319 youth centres and 10,000 NHS beds, and all of this has been cut, and he's this big sort of gentle giant kind of a guy that spends his day fucking saving people's lives, and you see him there shivering in the cold, reading this little crumpled bit of paper. Yeah. I got really emotional. It was hard not to sort of break down a little bit just watching the guy, and I was freezing cold and he was freezing cold, and I think it's people because we've spoken about it. I've been bouncing around the left for a long time. Sometimes begrudgingly. I don't view myself as on the left, but it's obviously a place that I went because I was like, hey, you guys are also anti-inequality, right? And sometimes I find the left a bit frustrating, let's say. But you go to a march like this and you see a guy who's just an NHS doctor who just wants to be able to, save people's lives and make sick people well, shivering in the cold, reading his little handwritten note out.
The thing, because you're talking about empathy there. You're talking about both with the guy, the massive doctor that's just it's almost a metaphor for kind of he's freezing, he's there, he's turned up, it's trying his best to say, and he's talking about all the things that have been taken. It's almost like an emotional metaphor for the whole system. And there's this fragile guy that shouldn't be fragile, and he's massive. And I talk a lot about empathy, and the more money that you have, actually neurologically it takes away your ability to feel that empathy. And reading your book, you're a trader with emotional kind of connection to the working class. Mm-hmm. And emotional connection to what all of these trades are doing, or the lack of paying taxes doing, and all of this. Mm-hmm. You're working in an environment that demands that you don't have emotion, that you don't have empathy. I think one of the reasons why a lot of the people that are trading come from an advantaged background is they don't have to deal with that cognitive dissonance of this has an effect, a big effect on other people. I just wondered if you had anything to say around that experience of being in an environment where having empathy is almost like a disability.
I think trading and trading floors are, for me, a super, super interesting space. And I think some people have kind of taken the book to be an attack on bankers, an attack on traders, an attack on finance. And that's actually not what I wanted the book to be. And I think if you read the book, I think you can feel that that's not what I'm trying to do. what is so amazing to me about the trading floors is it's not about immorality, it's about amorality, the absence of morals. But it's not even so much about that, right? It's about this kind of like robotification of humans. Like you're there and it's full of incredibly competitive, a lot of very intelligent, you know, mainly young men that are like obsessed with getting it right. You're looking at it from every angle. You've got access to like all the best economists and the data in the world, and you're out there. If you get it right, you're going to make millions. And, you know, everyone is devoted to this game. We're in. It's a bit like, you know, your Premier League football. You know what I mean? You're out there, you know, 11 versus 11. And everyone on that is just like, we're in. And I think this... So my educational background, I studied maths and economics. And when I was a kid, I was very, very good at maths. Like I won like a couple like big math competitions. And like this way that trading floors are really appeals to something that is that I kind of feel is like kind of like my natural nature, which is like in my heart of hearts, I'm a maths guy. And I want to be given like a puzzle to solve. And I want to like have this competition with the other best guys, and I want to win. You know, it's that kind of, it appeals to that sort of boyish competitiveness in me, but also just like, I'm good at maths, you know, I'm good at a certain kind of logic, a certain kind of analysis. And, you know, I'm sure it's the same for you, right? You realize when you're young, I'm good at comedy. You want to see how far that's going to take you. You want to take it to the top level. You want to like compete with other people. And you just follow your like talents as far as they can go. And it takes you to this space where what you end up doing is like betting on and massively profiting from like the collapse of living standards. So this is like, you know, this is really, really serious. I don't know if have you seen The Big Short? Yeah. So there's this one, in general, I cannot stand movies about trading floors. I couldn't watch Wolf of Wall Street, but The Big Short I actually really liked. And there's this one scene where these two young guys, they bet on, you know, the collapse of the economy. It's about 2008 crisis, and it's going well, and they're making, you know, millions, and they're you know, yeah, and there's Brad Pitt plays this kind of insane. He's lost his mind. He's a bit conspiracy theory, old wizened trader. And they've all made loads of money on this trade, and then he turns around to them and he says, "Stop dancing." And they're like, "What do you mean? Like we made so much money." You know, he's like, "Yeah, but stop fucking dancing." And they're like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Listen, do you know what it means? Do you know what it means when the economy collapses? Do you know how many people commit suicide? Do you know what happens to the divorce rate? You know, do you know, like this is, you have bet against the US economy, and this is like a real thing." And I think what is happening on the trading floors, like it's, in my opinion, it's no different to this manosphere stuff. No different. This is not about trading floors. This is about a way that we have trained our young people to like robotify themselves. To like, your function is to win, your function is to compete. Like we've sort of trained this empathy out of young people. I think especially young men, but you know, not just young men. Like, because you throw them into this space where, you know, it's just like Squid Game. And I loved Squid Game. I thought Squid Game was an excellent show. Like this, it's like, if you put people in a position where their only way to win is to like bet on these terrible things, you know, and I think sometimes people like misperceive what it would be like. You're on the trading floor, you're making these terrible bets, and you kind of assume like, all right, it's full of bad guys that know it's wrong. Yeah. But it's not. It's full of math geeks that don't know what the fuck they're doing. Like there's one scene towards the end of the book where I say to my Australian junior when I was living in Tokyo, in the book is called Arthur Kapowski, I said to him like, you know, do you think we should do something? And this guy knows that I'm making money, and he started to make money too, betting on like collapse. And he's like, "What do you mean we should do something?" And I'm like, you know, about like, you know, collapsing living standards. And he's like, "Well, we already put the trade on." and then, but like you see, you laugh, but like he has not said that in any way ironically. He's like, "We've already put the trade on, so what do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm not talking about the trade. Do you think we should do something?" And then he is like, are you saying you think we should put more of the trade on? That's what he thinks. And I'm like, no, it's not about the trade. I'm not talking about the trade. It's you know, should we do something about it? And he's like, I don't understand. Like, we've done it. You know, are you saying we should take it off? Like, he's so trained. And this is, you know, I think this is, I think, what we train a lot of young people to be. It's like, you know, you take there's no space to step back and look, you know, is this right? You know, is this a thing? And I think people have been so trained to be like so individualized and individualistic that they just think like, oh, you know, these things can't be fixed, things can't be solved. And obviously, you know, you look at history, you look at the labor movements of the 19th century and how much was achieved. But, you know, people nowadays, they just, and I get it, you know, I gave a talk at a school in Manchester, and somebody asked me, why did you quit your job? And I get asked this question a lot, and like one of the kids asked me that, and I was like, well, you know, I quit my job because I was betting on like the collapse of society and the collapse of living standards, and I don't want that to happen, so I thought I should try and stop that. And then the next question was, but weren't you making a lot of money? And it's like, well, yeah, I was, you know. But, you know, other things are important as well. And then the next question again, and I found this really interesting, was the third kid asked, why did you quit your job? And it was like, oh my God, you know. But then I would have been the same. You know, it's this trained like robotization. This idea that like to be anything other than just like a ruthless accumulator of money is insane. It's this, and I think back, there's this quote by Voltaire, which is, if there was no God, man would have to create him. And I really think that like in this, I'm not a religious person, but I think in this kind of post-religious society, it's created this kind of spiritual gap. And I think that has been, I honestly think it has become almost a spiritual belief for a lot of young people in this country and across the world, especially in, you know, US, England, like English-speaking countries. Your religious job in society is to make as much money as you can. And to do anything other than that just doesn't make any sense, I think. So it's I just thought I think it's so fascinating. You know, you see all these really smart people just betting on terrible things, and they're not necessarily evil people. Okay, some of them are not very nice people, it's clear in the book, but it's been trained away. The empathic question is just never gets asked.
Which is also, you know, I think in the mentality of the era that we live in, which is, you hear a lot of these phrases around capitalism, it's a dog-eat-dog world, you know, and it's so not a dog-eat-dog world. If it was a dog-eat-dog world, it doesn't, you know, that we don't just, all the dogs would eat each other and then we'd end up with one massive dog. Like, that's not the way that dogs work. Dogs work together, they work in packs. They, you know.
I was on a road trip once in the US. I did a road trip with a good friend of mine called Tom, and we drove from Washington, DC to Nashville, Tennessee. Wow. Yeah, and we were driving through like rural Virginia, and we wanted to go to some of these, you know, these famous like roadside attractions, like world's largest ball of twine kind of thing, which are famous in the States. And somebody suggested we go to something called like Dinosaur Land or something. It's hilarious. And they've got all these dinosaur statues that are like mainly quite rubbish, which is why it's hilarious. But I remember there was one like, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like a waxwork, I don't know, some sort of statue, of like a Tyrannosaurus eating like a Stegosaurus or something. And I remember underneath it, they had this little sign that says, in nature, as in all things, the powerful must devour the weak. No, the strong must devour the weak. And I remember just seeing this and just being like, I think one of the reasons why when I tried to quit banking, everybody lost their shit, was because they do need to tell themselves a story about why the world is going to shit and they're not doing anything. And the story they tell themselves often is, there's no alternative. You can't walk away from it. You can't do anything. There's no point. Like, it's ridiculous. And I think when they saw me like, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to try and stop that shit thing. I think it drove them mad, because I think they all, in their heart of hearts, there is that, you know, that 7-year-old boy that says, no, but like if something bad's happening, you should try and stop it. Yeah. And they've had to kind of kill that voice within them, and to see, and they've told themselves it's childish. Yeah. You know what I mean? To see a fully grown adult go and do it, especially, and the thing that really kills it is an adult who is a much more successful trader than them. That's the weird, like, little, and it's so funny to see the obsession with like, he wasn't a better trader than me. Yeah. I think when they see somebody like beat them at their game, and then sort of saying, but you know what, actually the most important thing is the thing which any of them could do. Any of them could leave at any point. They've got enough money. I think it just drives them crazy, really. I'm just interested in the way that people sort of justify to themselves, like, no, we can't do it.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, a video that I released 2 videos ago is all about childhood stories. It's all about it's almost Disney stories where we compartmentalize our moral selves. Because think of it, every single villain in every single childhood story is a rich person that's lost touch with reality. It's so clear, that having money and accumulation of wealth and all of this is actually a really toxic thing for everyone, for society. And it's couldn't be clearer put, right? Yeah. And yet we get to the point where we're about 12 or 13 years old, where we kind of slapped and gone, oh no, you've got to live in the real world. And we compartmentalize to think that that's unrealistic or idealistic. And what's interesting is that there is all of the amazing things that humankind have done has been unrealistic. Going to the moon is unrealistic. The first person that said we're going to go to the moon, even back, especially back in the 1960s, say what again? Even flying, the Wright brothers, all of the amazing things is unrealistic. That's how the amazing things happen. Yeah. But I'm obsessed at the moment with this idea that cynicism is a tax. If you look at Nigel Farage, so Nigel Farage is very much it's all bollocks, isn't it? And all these institutions are bollocks. But actually, all of the institutions that he's knocking down are the institutions that actually help people. It's because if you have money, you don't need institutions. If you don't have money, you need collective action. You need hope. You need a lack of cynicism. You need to come together and believe in a larger thing. And it's almost like stopping people kind of come together as a group. And one of the things that I think I'm curious about with your own work is that I see something unusual in your work is that you're kind of you try not to take sides, right? You try not to go listen, we need to fix the inequality gap. Yeah. I'm not about left, I'm not about right. Whoever can do it, I don't care how, but that's the key thing. Yeah. And I think it's really hopeful because it doesn't alienate anybody else. It doesn't put anyone else off the love list of they're important. But I just wonder what your thoughts are about that positioning of not being do you think it comes from your background of knowing people that, I know people when I grew up with that vote reform that are good people that want to vote for reform because they don't know another lever to just express their anger. But
so I think what sometimes people don't realize about me is that I quit my job in 2014 and I didn't start my YouTube till 2020. So there's this 6-year period of my life, which really people don't know much about. And that was this period where I moved back from Tokyo and I had been working in trading. And I had this sort of vague, fantastical idea that I'm going to somehow stop this inequality crisis with absolutely no specific understanding of how to do that. My training was maths and economics, my professional experience was trading, betting. And I just didn't really know how do we fix this? How do we fix this? And I spent 6 years floating around. Obviously, I looked at the political left. I think that's the obvious place you're going to go. Well, these are the guys who are supposed to care about inequality. And people think it's a lie. I honestly don't view myself as somebody on the political left. Obviously, I've allied with a lot of people there because there are people there that I sort of need to ally with to build a thing. But, I don't come from that sort of background. I went back to university. I worked at a think tank. I was looking around for all these things. Then I started writing for newspapers. And, you sit and you watch and you watch and you watch. There's this. So when I was a kid, I was massively into grime and grime music. And there's this one song, Dizzy Rascal's first album, and he repeated again and again and again this line: "Review the situation, take part, take over. Review the situation, take part, take over." Again and again and again, he used to say that. And I was sitting for ages. My sort of naive understanding was the group of people in society who are supposed to stop inequality from increasing, it was the political left. And this is my sort of non-politicized understanding. And there's other groups as well, obviously, trade unions and things like this. And I was watching the political left for ages, floating around. And, I met a lot of great people, and there are people that I still talk to a lot in that space. But every group that I got involved with, I looked at it and I just thought this isn't going to work. And obviously I know now I've got a YouTube channel named after me and with the logo is my face, right? But what I really, I was really burnt out when I finished at Citibank. And what I wanted was to come back to London and find a nice little, think tank or organisation to work with, part-time, 1 or 2 days a week, you know, maybe even unpaid, you know. Just wanted to, you know, I wasn't expecting to save the world. I just wanted to like get behind the good people doing the right thing and help them win. But every single group that I got involved with, I was just like, I can't see these guys winning. And a big thing which I remember, so I mean, you know, you're trying to get involved in the political left. And I remember going to this like one kind of meeting, I can't remember where it was. And, you know, it was a bunch of, you know, nice kids. I mean, back then I was young as well, but, you know, they were younger than me. You know, a lot of sort of people who, you know, early 20s, you know, doing a lot, if I'm totally honest, of talking about like Gramsci and Marx and Engels and stuff, and, you know, quoting like, and they would use these words that, you know, I didn't know what these words meant. You know, I can't even, you know, these complicated words, which I guess come from like, you know, philosophy, undergrad degrees. I did maths, obviously. I didn't know any of these words. And I remember once, like, some lady had like come into some event, she's from the local area. She just stood up and she was like, I can't feed my kids. I can't feed my kids. And she was incredibly frustrated because she, like me, didn't really understand anything anyone was saying. And was just, I can't feed my kids. I can't feed my kids. And but and obviously, you know, I am financially comfortable now, and I was at the time, but I grew up poor. And I just felt like until and unless these guys find some way to stop talking to each other in language that they understand and the public doesn't understand, and start looking outwards and start talking to the public in a way that feels like welcoming to the public and that the public can understand easily. Like, so when I started my channel, the big thing was, I want any ordinary person to open this channel, including somebody who might be a Reform voter, you know what I mean? Although when I started my channel, it's probably before the Reform Party even existed. And I want them to be like, this is for me. This channel is for me. Here is because, and I recognize, you know, to go back to like grime music, right? So when I was a kid, before grime music, so if anyone doesn't know, like grime music is like a kind of British, like kind of rap. It was started in London in sort of the late 90s, early 2000s, in East London, where I'm from. And before grime was a thing, you know, I was like a teenager. We used to watch MTV Bass, and it was like US hip hop videos. And it was all like some like US rapper, like dripping in gold chains, like throwing a stripper into a swimming pool. And suddenly, you know, we had Dizzy Rascal, you know, and Wiley, and these kids from Bow, you know, like young, poor black kids with like sideways baseball caps and baggy jeans saying, you know, I'm a problem for Anthony Blair, you know what I mean? And when this came up, and obviously I'm not black, like, obviously, but when I saw Dizzy Rascal, I saw me. That is me. Like, for that, like, compared to like the people I'm seeing on TV. And I was like, that's obviously, I don't think I'm as cool as Dizzy Rascal was or is, but
in economics,
I wanted to do that for because I knew that we were going to have in 2020. I knew we were going to move into a really serious economic crisis, and I was like, let's do that for economics. Let's do a space where when I saw Dizzy Rascal and Wiley and Kano and So Solid crew, oh my God, I was like, these guys are me. These guys are for me. These guys' lives are my life. These guys go to the same parties I go to, like. And I just, you know, I want to do that, you know, and you can't do that. You know, the fact is, you know, a lot of people have been trained to hate like the left. So you can't come out there and be like, I am the left. You know what I mean? Like, you have to go out there and say, listen, whether you're on the left or whether you're on the right, increasingly 70-80% of the country are having like more and more serious economic problems here. You know, even, you know, obviously there's some people who are on the sharp end that can't feed their kids, but even a lot of rich people can't afford to buy a house, can't afford to have a family. So let's fucking unify on that. And yeah, I think that's, you know, I think the left-right thing, you know, I really appreciate the support I've been given by people like Zach Polanski and other people on the left over the years. But if I can't turn around to my neighbour and say, let's fight together on this, then we're not going to win, are we?
And that was my conversation with Gary Stevenson. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, it was a 2.5-hour conversation, and we've edited it down to 3 episodes of about 20-30 minutes each. And I didn't want to release the whole 2.5 hours because it's kind of rambly. It's two friends talking. I will release it, however, on my Patreon in 2 parts. The first hour and a quarter this week, another hour and a quarter next week. So if you do want to feel the whole conversation and hear one magnificent fart on mic, you can see that here, and I'll put the link just here, but on my Patreon. But listen, thank you for watching, and if you do want to support the channel, you don't have to just on Patreon. You can buy me a one-off coffee if you want, because this channel just exists on your donations. Also, if you want to see me live, I'm a stand-up comedian, and you can see there's a mailing list to find out where I'm performing, if I'm performing in your area, and also of 3 shows that I'm doing, Barry's Economics Live in August. So thanks for watching, enjoy Gary's documentary, and I'll see you again next week.